Right. Good evening, everyone. Please be seated. Drop myself in. I think the first agenda item is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've had apologies from Councillors Bell, Greenhoff, Hall, Joanne, Keating, Laverick, Lowson, PJ Morrissey, Christine Morrissey, Shatwell, Stevenson and Wright.
Thank you very much. Does Council agree to the minutes of the last meeting on the 14th of June, subject to Councillor Taylor's apologies being added? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, official announcements. First of all, 4 short ones, I hope. On behalf of the Council, I would like to congratulate all those with a connection to Newcastle who were recognised in the King's Birthday Honours list. Quickly, secondly, just to say about the speaking times, I was reminded that these are shown on the screens, so I won't be giving any notice at today's meetings. I have received a request from the Labour Group for an emergency notice of motion on the proposals for railway ticket office closures, and the grounds for urgency relate to the recent announcement on the proposals, which happened after the publication of the agenda for this meeting. So I have agreed to the request, and the notice of motion is included on the items circulated for this meeting pack. So the notice of motion will be presented after agenda item 10. Now, I think just for confirmation, I do want to confirm that agenda item 7, the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy, has been deferred to a future meeting. And lastly, can I remind members of the safeguarding training, which has been organised for next Wednesday, that's the 19th of July, at 5:30 p.m. Now, this is important training, so I want to encourage everyone who's able to attend. Next item is agenda item 4, that's correspondence. Does Council agree to receive the letter from the Home Office, which is included in the supplemental agenda? It is what it is. Right, now we come on to the substantive business. 5 petitions have been received this month. So the first petition is from Councillor Allen, I believe, to present the petition, and to respond is Councillor Byrne, so she can be ready. I believe your petition, Councillor Allen, is about Heritage Gardens.
Correct.
Gosforth Park. Right, fine.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We, the undersigned, petition Newcastle City Council to improve the vehicle access to the residential site at Heritage Gardens in High Gosforth Park and A1056. The residents and visitors feel the current junction is unsafe and dangerous, so we request for the line markings to be adjusted and refreshed to allow for more space to safely enter the junction and wait for a space to turn. The highways officers are taking a retrospective approach and say they will act only after an accident has been reported to the police. This policy must change and the Council must adopt proactive safety measures. Signed by 62 people. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Byrne, to respond.
Apologies, yes. So the junction of Heritage Gardens with the A1056 is being assessed by officers following receipt of concerns from residents via the local ward members. There is a turning pocket in place at this junction to allow vehicles to wait for a gap in southbound traffic to turn right into the estate. This turning pocket will accommodate 2 to 3 vehicles waiting to turn. In order to assess the concerns about the safety of the junction, historical road safety information is being considered, along with information regarding vehicle speeds on this stretch of the A1056, which has a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit in place. The historical road safety information provided by Northumbria Police shows that there have been no recorded personal injury collisions at the junction during the last 5 full years. The average speed of vehicles travelling northbound is 30.53 miles per hour, and the average speed of vehicles travelling southbound is 32.07 miles per hour. These speeds are within the existing speed limit. 85th percentile speeds are also well within the existing speed limit. That is the speed at or below which 85% of the recorded vehicles were travelling. The 85th percentile speeds are 35.5 miles per hour northbound and 36.87 miles per hour southbound. Given that the speeds are within the existing speed limit and the good road safety record here, we could not recommend any measures be implemented at the present time. Obviously, I realise I've given you quite a lot of technical information there, so I will be responding in writing and happy to engage in further discussion with residents.
Could you address the issue of refreshing the lines, please?
That's a second question.
Obviously, if there is any issue with refreshing the lines, I'm more than happy to say that we can undertake things that are already in, things that are safety issues that are already in place, then we will address that, yes. So I'll come back to you with a written response on that.
Thank you.
Does council agree to receive the petition? Thank you. Now, secondly, I want to call on Brian Moore to present the petition regarding traffic in Gosforth.
We call upon Newcastle City Council for the junction Gosforth High Street, Salters Road, Church Road to install a yellow box junction to aid the flow of traffic through the junction, review the traffic light sequence to improve traffic flow, use the enforcement powers for moving traffic conventions under Part 6 of the Traffic Management Act 2004 to use enforcement powers to ensure restrictions are complied with by motorists. The effect will minimise delays and congestion through ensuring the correct use of restrictions, improve the performance of the highway, contributing to improved safety, enable the police to focus on more complex matters.
Thank you, Ms Moore. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Moore, and thank you, Lord Mayor. The request to introduce the yellow box junction road marking at the High Street Church Road traffic signals will be included in the next stage of the High Street Improvement Scheme. Monitoring of the site post-implementation will be undertaken, and should non-compliance be identified as a road safety risk, camera enforcement could be considered. This would be subject to a 6-week consultation exercise. With regard to the phasing of the signals, traffic engineers have reviewed this and concluded that amending the sequences suggested would result in a reduction of the total green time as a proportion of the overall cycle. So this would actually result in increased congestion on all arms of the junction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does council agree to receive the petition? The third petition is from Saeed Hock regarding the taxi policy. And Councillor Mains to respond. Saeed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening, Council. This petition I present for you has our reasons for rejecting this policy. Within 3 weeks, the petition attracted around 800 signatures. Over 400 signatures are passengers, members of the public. All strongly oppose this policy. The petition highlights some fundamental concern for which we put forward for our suggestion. This petition highlights some fundamentals. We don't believe this white bonnet safeguard or protect the public and us drivers. we strongly oppose the white bonnet. I am glad there is a delay in decision making and ask the council to sit down with the taxi trade together for us to shape a new policy which will safeguard both drivers and the passengers. Thank you, Lord Mayor, thank you, Lord Mayor, Council, for giving me this opportunity to present this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hogg. Councillor Means.
Yes, thank you, Mr Hogg. Thank you for bringing your concerns to Council. As you are aware, the policy has been delayed until a future date, and we have confirmed that the GMB union, which I understand is at the forefront of unionisation for a lot of taxi drivers, has confirmed that they are happy to work with us as a group to look at other systems, other issues and things like that. However, the GMB unit has also confirmed that the system that the policy is looking at does not actually limit or disadvantage taxi drivers. In terms to the application of a white bonnet vinyl together with reverting Newcastle Hackney cabs back to base black colour was to promote a contrasting feature to distinguish Newcastle taxis from other cars, private, licensed private hire and non-licensed non-Newcastle licensed vehicles. The white vinyl finish applied does not cause any glare to oncoming traffic, which I think was part of your original longer question that you had, and is comprised of the same compound as the base colour paint. Also, in addition, the cars will also be fitted with council-issued door crests to the driver and front passenger door side, internal licence markings, an illuminated for hire sign and a uniform sized top sign displaying the words City of Newcastle upon Tyne Taxi. By distinguishing a uniform fleet with a distinctive white bonnet, proposals are intended to provide additional reference for enforcement and safeguarding agencies and also to deter illegal opportunist taxi drivers pulling over. The Hackney carriage vehicle providers will be issued with a £100 grant for the financing of the vinyl wrap, and this will be sourced from ring-fenced licensing budget. And I hope that answers some of the questions that you raised in the longer question of your petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Means. Does Council agree to accept the petition? Right. The fourth petition is from Mohammed Subhan regarding the taxi policy. And again, Councillor Means.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, Council. I present to you petitions signed by 23 Wingub Ward, 15 Elzik Ward, 7 Arthurs Hill, 4 Benwell and Scotchwood Ward, and 6 Dean and South Gosford Wards Hackney drivers. This petition outlines some of the reasons for us all Hackney drivers objecting and rejecting this policy. Every taxi drivers welcome any improvements to drivers and our passengers' safety. However, we don't believe the white bonnet offers any added safety for us. The 62,000 initial investment implementing the white bonnet wrap is a waste of taxpayers' money, which could be better spent elsewhere. We welcome this postponement and urge councillors to readdress our concerns. Thank you, Lord Mayor and Council, for allowing me the opportunity to present this petition.
Thank you, Mr. Subhan. Councillor Means.
Thank you for bringing the petition to Council. And promoting this policy, which, as you are aware, we are sort of looking at again with the GMB, the key consideration was to ensure that licensed vehicles are identifiable and capable of being distinguished from private hire cars. That need was also to reflect the unique functionality of Newcastle Hackney carriages as the only vehicles licensed to pick up passengers in the city without pre-booking. As I've already outlined, that the white bonnet wrap will be complemented by licence plates as well as a sign across the top of the car saying City of Newcastle upon Tyne Taxi. This policy also will set out to reflect a safeguarding response to evidential concerns relating to vulnerability. The Council are aware of a number of recent police investigations into allegations relating to unlicensed vehicles picking up, in particular, lone vulnerable females in the nighttime economy. It became evident from the police Operation Cloak that offenders were utilising vehicles to target vulnerable people. And that's why people like the city pastors, the taxi wardens, have actually said that they agree with the policy of identifying the cars by a white bonnet because they think it would be more visible to them. And unfortunately, a lot of taxis, Hackney taxis, recently have started to change colour and are wrapped in other vinyls, pink vinyls, Just Eat vinyls and things like that. So for us, having a brand that's very, very noticeable and very apparent as being a Newcastle upon Tyne taxi is seen as quite a major part of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mains. Does Council agree to receive the petition? Thank you. The final petition has more than 2,500 local signatures and is therefore the subject of a time-limited debate here at full council. Can I remind members that the procedure is that the presenter of the motion, the petition, has 5 minutes to present their petition, and then there is scope for council to debate the matter for up to 15 minutes and no longer. Reminder here, just for all speakers to keep to the time limit, with each member's contribution limited to 3 minutes, and that includes the cabinet member, the seconder of any motion, and there will be 2 opposition members allowed to speak. So I would call on Anthony Baird to present the petition on the Jesmond Low Traffic Neighbourhood Scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, for allowing me to present my petition, the objection to the East Jesmond Low Traffic Neighbourhood Scheme. That's the Jesmond road closures. The petition now has over 4,000 signatures, so I assume most of you have read it. That's thousands of local people who are angry with the disruption the road closures are causing to their lives, their livelihoods and their businesses. Now, you may have been told the road closures have enhanced Jesmond, they've cut pollution, they've allowed kids to play football in the streets and birds to tweet in the trees. They haven't. The Jesmond road closures have forced traffic onto surrounding main roads, which are now frequently gridlocked at busy times. And this has damaged the viability of local businesses, many of which rely on passing trade. So the Jesmond road closures have put people's jobs and livelihoods at risk. The proprietor of Fern Avenue Antique sums it up. We've lost all passing trade, and the extra time it's taking people to get to us is forcing them to shorten or even abandon their visit. People need to be able to access our business with cars. You simply can't take an antique wardrobe home on a bike. Then there's the human cost to ordinary working people. Here's a comment from a mother who uses the coast road to get to work at the Nuffield Hospital in Jesmond. Since the closures, the traffic has become so excessive, it's added almost an extra hour onto my travel time. I've now had to start paying for my child to attend a breakfast club so I can leave home earlier to ensure I get to work on time. Not only are these closures affecting my family financially, they are taking its toll emotionally. Now, of course, gridlock on Jesmond Road, Osborne Road and Matthew Bank means more pollution, more emissions and more CO2. But these are residential streets. Is it fair that residents on these roads have to breathe in more fumes so residents of presumably more important streets with bigger houses can breathe fresh air? And are we expected to accept the deterioration of some people's health as just unavoidable collateral damage for the alleged common good, along with all those job losses? No one can realistically argue the scheme has been any good for the environment. Actually, not even the council can, because they haven't gathered any adequate data for the most badly affected roads. So any meaningful before and after comparison is impossible. And maybe that's why, in its interim report on the Jesmond road closures, the council published journey times for Sandyford, not Jesmond, to the coast road. Can you smell a rat there? I think what we're smelling is called gaslighting. The road closures discriminate against vulnerable people who can't walk and cycle and rely on cars to get around. And since 2 doctors have resigned from the Osborne Road Health Centre, citing problems with the traffic jams, access to primary health care in Jesmond for these people has deteriorated. From a policing perspective, our overall consideration is that the implementation of this TRO, that's the road closures, is likely to adversely impact our ability to provide effective policing in the area. That's a statement from Northumbria Police. Here's one from the Fire Service. Best case scenario is not to have roads closed. Ambulance. We recognise such schemes may affect response times. In an emergency, minutes, even seconds, make a difference between life and death. And it's just a matter of time before someone dies waiting for an ambulance which is stuck in gridlock or stuck on the wrong side of the bollards without the right key to get through. So I'd like you to consider how that will sit with your conscience if you vote to continue with this experiment. Now, supporters of the scheme claim it's made the streets in Jesmond safer for cycling and walking, but the council has no evidence the streets were dangerous before they were blocked off. And now they're much more desirable if you're a thief on an e-bike, and much more intimidating if you're a woman walking home alone late at night. Any benefits to this scheme are marginal at best. And are they worth it when set against the loss of jobs, the increased risk of crime, deterioration to emergency services, increased pollution, and a damage to physical and mental health? Well, we don't think they are. Do you? One final thought I'd like to leave you with. Why is this Labour Council continuing to press ahead with a Conservative government's road closure policy when even the Tories have abandoned it?
Thank you, Mr. Baird. You may want to remain. Councillor Byrne to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for bringing this petition to Council. We welcome all feedback on the Jesmond East Neighbourhood Low Traffic Zone. This is a trial scheme introduced under an experimental traffic order in order to respond to concerns received in relation to traffic levels and speeds on residential streets. The trial is designed to reduce the amount of traffic travelling through the area. Every property in the area can still be accessed by motor vehicle, but depending on the journey, they may have to use alternative routes using main roads. With less traffic cutting through, neighbourhood streets can become safer and more attractive places for the people who live there. It gives children more space to play and encourages more people to walk and cycle on local journeys. Under an experimental traffic order, the formal consultation takes place during the first 6 months of the trial. The thinking behind this is that it allows people to comment on their actual experience rather than what they anticipate will happen. We are also able to tweak schemes in response to feedback in the hope of coming up with the best possible version. During the consultation, people can feedback online using commonplace, via email, in writing or by phone. We are collecting our own pollution and traffic data, and we have access to other monitoring data, such as that collected by the Traffic and Accident Data Unit, who collect data on behalf of the wider Tyne and Wear region. If we decide the trial scheme in Jesmond could be a permanent solution, we have committed to collecting a full year of data before making that decision. We have had negative feedback about the trial, and we've also had positive feedback. We're using that feedback together with our own data to identify ways in which the trial could be improved and to determine whether it is achieving its objectives, whether there are any negative impacts, and if so, whether we can remove or mitigate them. And if we found that there were negative impacts that we couldn't address and would outweigh the benefits of the scheme, we would have to find other ways to address the issues the trial is designed to resolve. In evaluating the evidence, we will be considering all feedback, but we will be prioritising the impact on people who actually live in the zone, and within that group, those residents who live in streets previously open to through traffic. For those not familiar with the area, there have been multiple previous road closures which put additional pressure on those roads that remained open. We'll be weighting the impact on modes of transport in line with the road hierarchy, walking or wheeling, by which I mean using wheelchairs, cycling, motor vehicles. In all cases, we will need evidence of impact. So, for example, a business that wants to report a loss of custom would have to provide figures to back that up. A resident who has concerns about journey times or to feedback, as some have, that they think journey times are not as impacted as has been claimed, would have to give details of location and the time the journey is made. With that in mind, we will be inviting everybody who has commented so far to provide us with further information. We are also working with the emergency services. The emergency services were consulted during the development of the scheme, and we will continue to consult with them throughout the trial. It's important to note that if at any point an emergency service told us they did not want us to continue the trial, we would stop it. There are statements from each of the services that you can read on Commonplace. The police have raised some operational issues, and I'd like to take a moment to thank Pat Roycroft, the resident who alerted me to this, which we are discussing with them. Right, I'm sorry, I've got much more I could say about the trial, but I am aware of the timing, so I can come back and give further details at the end. What I will be moving is that we accept the petition, that we invite everybody who signed, if they haven't already been in touch with us, to register with us on Commonplace so we can discuss with them further, and to accept the petition. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Byrne. I take that motion needs to be seconded, and I think that's by Councillor Kemp, who's on his feet. So thank you, Councillor Kemp. And could Councillors Brown and Ferguson be ready for their next speech? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to second the motion proposed by Councillor Byrne. I think the key point to reiterate that this is a pilot, and a pilot is a trial. And the purpose of every trial that we run is transparent, to listen and to learn from the views and observations of people in Newcastle. What I would suggest is we've heard many, many views expressed in the petition and on Commonplace. They are views. What we're very interested in is the evidential case behind that, as Councillor Byrne has said. Not simply to say anecdotally something has happened, but the evidence base, and that will be weighted and measured in the consultation. We've been clear in publishing the aims of this trial in Jesmond from the start: to pilot reduced traffic in residential streets, encourage vehicles to use identified main routes around the area, and encourage people towards active modes of transport where possible. As with all pilots, this trial is time and scope limited to allow us more fully understand all of the impacts of the actions taken, including any indirect and unintended impacts on the day-to-day lives of residents living in Jesmond, as Councillor Byrne has said. To gather this information effectively, we clearly set out our engagement and consultation processes and have continuously publicised ways for residents, businesses, community groups and local services to give us their views. There are things in the trial that we could have done differently. For example, there was a time lag between asking for ideas and publishing the proposals. People may have forgotten or assumed we weren't going ahead, and we've acknowledged that. And of course, legitimate challenge is welcome. But at the same time, it's become clear that some opponents of the trial are seeking to discredit the scheme and the Cabinet member in order to achieve their goals. That's not reasonable debate, but we're all for reasonable debate. And I do find it somewhat disappointing that the Speaker would make a reference of gaslighting. I think we are above that, so I'd hope that that will be acknowledged. I would also note that the Lib Dems had a North Jesmond councillor throughout the development of the scheme, and that they were consulted by officers and the Cabinet member at the time, and I'm not aware of any comments being made at that point. It's not our job to listen to the loudest voices, it's our job to make sure that all our voices are heard and considered. And I think that's really, really important. Equally, the validity of the submissions made is incredibly important. When we say local consultation, it must mean local consultation. And therefore, as Councillor Byrne has said, I think the provision of people's addresses to show that where they live and how they are affected by the scheme is really important. We've seen petitions in this chamber with representations from as far as fields in Newcastle, New South Wales. So, and Tom, you can shake your head all you like, but it's called a legitimate process. So last month, we published an interim report that presented our findings so far. We're continuing to monitor the impacts of the trial in Jesmond, including an equalities impact assessment, which will inform a final independent report. We're listening to all the feedback we receive. Every voice is being heard as part of this democratic consultation process, and we would receive this petition as part of that process. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Mrs. B has lived in her home on Cavendish Place, Jesmond, since 1964, nearly 60 years. One of the joys in her life is to meet up with her friends at the Baptist Church in Heaton. She's not so good on her feet these days and often has to rely on a taxi to get her to Heaton. This is now a much longer and more expensive journey, if you can even get a taxi because of the bollards in Jesmond. When I spoke to her on Saturday about the bollards, she said to me whimsically, it feels like the final straw. I'm going to have to move out of Jesmond. Dr. N lives with his family on Grosvenor Place. He's a consultant at the Freeman Hospital. He's regularly on call, when his phone goes off, he urgently has to get across to the hospital. That trip used to be straightforward, down the Cradlewell and up to the Freeman. It's part of why they chose to live where they do. But now, when he gets the call, he has to decide whether to go by the Jesmond Road or Matthew Bank, both options longer and slower than before, all the time thinking of his patient who needs him, someone's mum or dad, son or daughter, who needs that additional stress. Jesmond Swimming Pool on St George's Terrace is a much-loved feature of our community, providing a valuable service and a popular one. But COVID and rocketing energy prices have really hit us hard. On top of this, as a direct result of the bollards, they have lost at least 40 bookings a week, mainly children not able to get there on time because of the bollards. That's over £1,000 of income per month, which they can ill afford to lose. These are just 3 examples of the impact of the low traffic neighbourhood trial in Jesmond, but there are literally thousands, 4,200 others, residences, businesses, and people who work in Jesmond, as we have already heard. However unintentional, this trial has physically divided a community. But it has also emboldened and unified a community. There is no North Jesmond or South Jesmond. There is no East Jesmond or West Jesmond. There is just Jesmond. And it is saying clearly, we want less traffic on our streets, but not at this price. So the message is clear: rethink, start again, have meaningful consultation with the community, and get to a better solution for all. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, Councillor Brown, I think that may have been your maiden speech, and if so, we would want to congratulate you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. How has it come to this? First, a charged election campaign, then a fraught audit committee meeting, and now 4,000 signatures on a petition. Why has the subject of this low-traffic neighbourhood become so contentious? Where are the solutions? 86 days since we were told automatic number plate recognition was going to save the day. All quiet on that now. At heart, I think we all want the same thing: clean air, quiet streets, environmental sustainability. I want my son to be able to grow up playing out. I want us to achieve net zero. Fewer cars on the streets will have to be part of the equation. I'm sure almost all of us in the chamber and in the gallery agree on that. But what hope do we have of achieving those goals if this is the response when questions are raised? Already, we see new challenges to old schemes. The prospect of public trust in any new scheme being delivered is likely to be perilously low. The likelihood of making progress recedes yet further away. It is possible to have progress. New schemes have been successfully implemented where residents have been engaged in advance, options have been presented, and a majority preference established. Unfortunately, I believe the administration has fallen into the trap of believing that because some objections will be made against every proposed new scheme, then no objections should matter for any proposed new scheme. Over what should have been a quiet matter, we have posed now questions of political governance, of candour and transparency, of basic credibility, not, to be clear, sitting at the door of any one individual, but at the decision-making apparatus led by this Labour administration and the collective responsibility that they all share. We have an internal review that goes unmentioned. And all for what? But for want of our leaders saying, "We hear you, we're listening, we'll act." Continuing to dig your heels in won't help support any future highway schemes without significant controversy, to say nothing of the present situation. Change course, engage, bring people back on side.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Byrne, you have the right to reply to the debate. In particular, you may want to refer to the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A couple of points for clarification on Councillor Brown's comments. As you know, because I told you when we met, I invited anybody who was on call to get me a letter from their trust and I would arrange emergency access. I have not heard anything from any trust requesting access for an on-call doctor. Somebody wants to send that, then I'd be happy to arrange that, and you're well aware of that because I told you when we met. In terms of Jesmond Pool, I'd simply invite the pool to make direct contact, as I've already said. We need direct evidence from businesses. We can't rely on hearsay. I think what I would say is Councillor Brown-Ferguson speak from the luxury of opposition. I have the pressure of power, and I'm happy to do that. I don't accept that criticisms of governance or decision-making aren't criticisms of me because I am the decision-maker. No. Right? And every time that people try and discredit the decision-making, they are actually trying to put pressure on me. And you know what? That's okay, because I'm very happy to defend all of the decision-making and everything that has happened throughout this scheme. Where we could have done things better, we've been happy to acknowledge that. We did not suggest that AMPR would save the day. The Jesmond Labour councillors offered to work with the community on a proposal, and that is something that they are still working on. This is a live consultation where we are dealing with the issues as they arise. You mentioned the internal review. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that the internal review was begun in response to requests from myself and from Councillor Kemp when we were contacted by the resident about the Northumbria police issue, which we hadn't been informed of. It is not a result of the comments made at Audit Committee, and I will simply make public here that I have made a formal complaint about what happened at Audit Committee, because I think audit must be carried out in an independent and objective way. Political comments and comments about my integrity are not appropriate for Audit Committee, and it is the subject of a formal complaint. But you know what? All of that is to one side. What is important is that when you are creating change, there will be difficulties. We're asking people to change behaviour. We're putting pressure on people in their everyday lives. I absolutely accept and understand that people are angry and upset about this, which is why I've accepted and tolerated the abuse that has come my way. It's part of the job. What we have to do when we have these kind of situations where there are competing interests and different point of view is to keep going and listening to every point of view, to evaluate evidence, not anecdote, and to take the time and patience to come to a fair conclusion. That's why we have a 6-month consultation period. That's why we are continuing with the work. And that's why I move that we accept the petition as part of that 6-month consultation process. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. The question before Council then is, does Council agree to deal with the petition as proposed in the motion from Councillor Byrne and seconded by Councillor Kemp? Agreed? That's agreed. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6 and 3. Public questions or addresses to Council have been received this month. So again, I'm reminding Council that there's 15 minutes available for this item in total. So the first one is to ask Mr Moore to ask the first question regarding a low traffic neighbourhood for Gosforth.
Gosh, I didn't think it would be so topical. Councillor Byrne, given that LTNs have been implemented successfully across parts of Gosforth, North Jesmond, Fenham and many other areas of the city, can you please confirm the date that Newcastle City Council plans to implement LTN proposals as presented at the meeting on the 9th of March at the Trinity Centre as part of the experimental bus lane on Gosforth High Street 2023 as a matter of urgency, including with the following modifications: enhanced features such as a stopping of through traffic on Ivy Road, The Grove, Moore Road North, Linden Road, North Avenue, Brackenfield Road and Regent Road North, including public consultation.
Thank you. I have to say, it made me smile to have a question about the successful implementation of our low traffic neighbourhoods. You see, as I said, there are differing points of view on this topic. I do have to clarify what the situation is in regards to Gosforth. So the City Council introduced some interim bus improvements for Gosforth High Street at a drop-in session in March 2023. So that's when we're explaining to people about the experimental scheme on the High Street itself. At that session, some thoughts and ideas were also shared about changes, including potential road closures that could encourage and support walking, cycling and wheeling in the area. That was not a proposal. We made it very clear at that point that at the consultation event that we were telling people about the experimental order on the High Street and were suggesting what future ideas could be. So our intention was to gather some early reaction to these ideas from residents and businesses, which has been helpful. The ideas were not plans for implementation, and any future work on low traffic neighbourhood zones in Gosforth will be subject to its own engagement and consultation process. So it's not imminent. We will look into it and we will come back at a future point to explain what the consultation process will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Mr Moore, you have a right to respond for up to 1 minute.
Councillor Byrne, please hold the line on low traffic neighbourhoods and don't let the opportunist Liberal Democrats change your direction. Councillor Byrne, when bus lanes have been put in historically in Newcastle, money has always been made available to stop rat running. On the High Street, we've gone from a dual carriageway to a single lane. The amount of rat running now in Gosforth is far more, in my opinion, it's far more excessive than North Jesmond. So please, Councillor Byrne, can you look at certain aspects of what is being suggested here to implement in Gosforth? Because with the Great Park being built, the pressure on Gosforth side streets now is excessive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Moore. And I must apologise to Council because I've misled you, and I don't want to do that. There are only 2 public questions. That first one from Mr Moore, and I will now call on Mr McBean to ask the next question regarding speed limits on the Greenway. And Councillor Mains, I believe, is to respond.
It's a smaller step. Sorry, Lord Mayor.
It's all right.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My name is Trevor McBean. I'm a resident of NE5, Chapel Park. The question I have is, when is the Greenway in NE5 going to be returned to the correct speed limit of 30 miles an hour? The Greenway was incorrectly adjusted to 20 miles an hour when all of the side roads in Chapel Park Estate were reduced under a safety scheme. This was clearly an error or an oversight. It has been rumoured for a number of years that is going to be corrected, along with 6 other roads. This may sound a strange request to actually ask for a speed increase, but it would make it much simpler for Northumbria Police to enforce a speed limit on my estate. It's being used as a rat run. by people who don't reside on Chapel Park in speeds of excess of 40 miles an hour. And this has been increased due to the high number of additional houses being built on the green belt. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr McBean. And I do apologise again. I don't think it's Councillor Mean, because Councillor Byrne is still over there.
It's me again. Busy evening. So thank you for your question. A 20-mile-per-hour speed limit was introduced on Greenway in 2011 as part of citywide measures to introduce 20-mile-per-hour speed limits on all neighbourhood streets in the city, i.e. those which were primarily residential in character and were not A or B class roads. Greenway has a limited number of direct frontages and is a bus route, and as such it may be appropriate to reinstate the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, although it would be quite unusual to increase the speed limit in a residential area. Speaking for myself, I would obviously want to have more information from Northumbria Police on their view of that, if we were to consider that.
Sure.
We have been asked by local ward members to make this change to the speed limit. This would need to be subject to consultation with affected properties and would not be introduced if not supported by residents. So we anticipate that this scheme will be potentially be brought forward for consultation during the current financial year, and we'll keep you updated. Thank you.
Where's the...
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Mr McBean, you have a right to respond for up to 1 minute.
I would like to know the properties that have frontage onto the road, onto the Greenway, because there's nothing that I'm aware of that has what could be considered direct frontage onto the street or the road.
Yeah. Could you put that question to the Cabinet Member on an email, please?
Sure.
Yes, I'll be happy to feed back to you by that in writing. Because I'm not familiar with it myself, so I will check with officers and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McBean. Right, okay, we're moving on now to agenda item 7, which I said earlier, as mentioned earlier, this item has been deferred to a future meeting. So that's agenda item 7. We move on to agenda item 8, which is members' questions, and 9 questions marked for written reply have been circulated, and the responses are included in the supplemental agenda and are also published on the City Council's website. And so we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the Cabinet Member report. And seeing as he stood over there, I will call on Councillor Kemp, the Leader of the Council, to present his portfolio report. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to present my second report as Leader of Council. I am taking it as read in general. I'm grateful for the comments, the questions received via the scrutiny process, all very constructive and informative. I think a few headlines which I'd just like to pick out is incredibly proud about our response to the cost of living crisis. I recall having a debate some time ago when the previous leader of the opposition criticised us for lack of action and the fact he wanted a commission. I think the report sets out very clearly direct actions are much more beneficial for the residents of the city. Our winter wellbeing hubs have been a huge contribution to our residents. The fact we have the cost of living guide has been incredibly well received and well used as a resource. The prescribe and heat scheme to support residents most impacted by fuel poverty, targeted distribution of baby care, and also things like local procurement, which we've launched through our economic strategy. Last year, the financial year, 64% of the council spend with third parties was North East suppliers, 34% of which was Newcastle based. We continue to grow that and we'll drive that further and further through our inclusive economic strategy. Our anti-poverty strategy is a clear sign of recognition about one of our key political priorities. Delighted to see progress is being made. The delivery plans are being developed as we speak. And I think these will be owned by all of us collectively. We all have a moral and social responsibility on this agenda. I think in broad, getting the basics right, the prevention of homelessness is a huge success. Further investment of £1.2 million into our neighbourhoods, providing new new services and neighbourhood cleansers. Councillor Byrne's initiative through the Getting the Basics Right around the pop-up recycling schemes are being tremendously successful. Continue to roll those out. Our success rate, building on the previous leadership's administration around clean and green, is extraordinarily positive, to be recognised nationally yet again for our successes as we strive towards our 2030 targets. And looking forward, standing up for fair and proper funding for Newcastle, for central government, building an inclusive economy where everyone benefits, championing growing arts and culture in the city, and playing our role in the proposed expanded combined authority are all the challenges we face going ahead, which will help contribute to the city. Very happy to take questions, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. And before we move on, can I remind councillors to ask questions on this item rather than make speeches, because apart from anything else, you'll be taking time off other members. There's a total amount of time of 25 minutes under Standing Order 10 allocated for this item. So the first question is from Councillor Story, the second question from Councillor Ashby, and then Councillor Smith. Councillor Story.
Lord Mayor, Council, thank you, Councillor Kemp, for your report. And the question that I have for you is, small businesses are very much the backbone of the city and our economy, and I want to know more from you about how we're going to involve small businesses in our emerging economic strategy.
Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kemp, for your interesting overview of the city's progress. The report refers to the number of people helped into jobs by Newcastle Futures. Each year I view this figure with interest, and each year regret it isn't bigger. The needs there, the expertise we have, and more is needed. Can you do more? And as this is a one-year report, with one-year figures should be supplied, as well as three-year figures on this and other topics. Can that be done, please? We need many more trees being planted now for the future.
Sorry, Councillor Ashby, I think it's a bit indistinct. Could you either speak up or...
I didn't understand at all what the first... Sorry, Robin, I didn't understand what your question was.
Okay. Is that any better?
I can hear you, I just didn't understand what your question was. Sorry.
Oh, right. The question is, what more can you do about Newcastle Futures, given its importance? And can we have one, instead of having three-year figures, can we have one-year figures, please, on this? And there are several others within the report. We need many more trees being planted now, and I'm happy to supply you with information about how trees in particular can, in 20 years' time, when the need because of climate change will be greater than ever, provide shade and a cooler microclimate on our streets in the sweltering summers to come. And residents will thank the Council for its forethought, so please can we have more trees? The report refers to the consultation including Gosforth High Street bus lanes. Often the word consultation is used for what's really informing residents about what's been decided. There's no possibility of change. Can I commend to you the genuine consultation carried out by the Council with residents of Garden Village? In response to their views, they were asked in detail about numbers and species of trees to be planted, their locations and supporting maintenance with community support. And that's real consultation, and I believe we should be pursuing it. And finally, on getting the basics right, the leader will well remember his views on telephone call responses. Many residents still report to us the difficulty of getting a timely answer on first ringing, and then from departments. Is the leader still of the opinion that the service is not fit for purpose?
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Smith?
Yes,
to be followed by Councillor Williams and then Councillor Lovett. Sorry, do apologise.
That's all right. Thank you to the leader for an interesting oversight report. In the section on net zero, the leader highlights the benefits that school streets can deliver. Leamington Riverside Primary School is expected to go live in the autumn. Closing the street immediately outside this school will not make children safer unless we address the issues on the busy main roads nearby. Does the Leader of Council agree with me that we need to look at the whole school journey rather than just the small streets that surround the school? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I hope you're getting all of these, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Newcastle has an ambitious plan for a net zero future. Given the current government's less ambitious aspirations, how can we maintain our impetus?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got 2 points to make. Only 4 schools have been implemented to date with school streets, with 2 more planned. I've been told there will be a review. I had an email today from the school streets officer.
Could you speak up, please?
All right, it's not very good.
Oh, right. It
Yep.
might be the microphone.
Thanks.
I do apologise.
I've been told that there will be a review of school streets later in the year, which I would have expected. Councillor Kemp, I'd like to know if you are fully committed to implementing school streets and when can Archibald Street and other streets on the list expected be included in the implementation. Secondly, Councillor Kemp, transport is high on the Liberal Democrat priorities for Newcastle, considering the cost of living crisis, and you are a member of the North of Tyne Joint Transport Committee. What are you doing to highlight the plight of our residents who are being cut off from transport networks, unable to access the £2 bus service with the gradual reduction in bus services across Newcastle? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Penny Evans and Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kemp, for this report. I'm sure all members welcome the administration's mission to support our residents with the cost of living crisis and to look at ways to tackle poverty. Figures on child poverty are shocking, especially in the North East. Many members feel passionate about tackling poverty, so I wondered, how can members get involved and support the anti-poverty strategy? How can we ensure that organisations, including major employers and anchor institutions, are also involved? And what role can Scrutiny Committee play in supporting the development of the anti-poverty strategy, whether that's helping monitor targets, reviewing progress, or acting as a critical friend? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penny Evans. Councillor Ferguson, to be followed by Councillor Campion and then Councillor Taylor. And they'll, within the time limit, to give Councillor Kemp time to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I know that the Leader and I share many views on the city's need to approach consultation effectively from the work that we did together in the Budget Task and Finish group. And I noted on page 13 of the Leader's report the reference to a phrase he uses often about putting residents at the heart of everything the Council does. So I'd just be interested in the Leader's comments on how the Council's approach to consultation and engagement is evolving under his leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Campion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a two-parter. Part 1, can you clarify whether or not you mean £60 million or £60 a year in devolution funding for adult education and skills? I'm not sure £60 a year is going to go hugely far. And the second part is you sit on the North East Combined Authorities Joint Transport Committee, which oversees bus and metro usage. Can you please explain what work you did to keep our metro running, our buses in service and prices low? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp, you mentioned in your report the importance of the Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and I have previously expressed my concern that the Health and Wellbeing Board hasn't met since March. I do see that there's a meeting next week. But I'd like you to say how you think the Health and Wellbeing Board will work with the ICB to try and improve health and wellbeing across Newcastle, because obviously that's going to be a very important partnership.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Kemp, would you like to respond? If you can.
No. I will, yes, of course. I'll go in reverse order. I think I'll pick the piece regarding Health and Wellbeing Board. As you say, Councillor Taylor, there is a meeting scheduled next week. I'm actually speaking with one of the directors of the Regional Health Board, talking about the challenges of how we ensure that the Health and Wellbeing Boards are aligned with the work of the new structures, which are as yet work in progress, I think it's fair to say. I think there's an issue about where the geographical fit of the ICP and the ICP sit alongside our Health and Wellbeing Board. I am due a meeting with Sam and Claire Riley to look at the alignment and ensure that in many ways we get a geography that sits probably logically going ahead with the combined authority footprint along with the geographies of the health service. Otherwise I think we have real challenges. And I think it's really, I think there should be, I hope, a very healthy and useful conversation at the next board meeting around quite how we interact and how we show that we get the best value for our residents and the health impacts for our residents through that relationship. I'm not a health expert and I would bow to you, far more knowledgeable than I am in that, but I do think there's a challenge, but it's a challenge that's recognised and we need to move on it quickly. Councillor Campion, 60 million, I think you know that, but thank you for the typo. Your second question I didn't quite understand. You asked, I think, my role in making sure the metros and the bus services ran effectively. Am I correct in saying? Yes, so yeah, well obviously I'm not driving them, but I am sitting there and making constructive comment, impact throughout, ensuring that we look to get effective funding into the system, looking at where possible the expansion of the metro service. We have overseen the investment over a long term through a Labour government and then through Labour councils, £360 million investment into the Metro Reinvention Programme, which is including now some new stock, as you're well aware. We continue to fight hard and vocally around the provision of bus services. We see more and more communities being potentially estranged from routes that they would previously have run. We're lobbying hard. We did introduce the £2 fare, and we also introduced the travel that was subsidised in order for people who are ex-care. So I think we've been doing well, but there is much more to be done. And I think Councillor Gannon, chairing that committee, does a remarkably good job in making the case for us, not just in Newcastle, but for the whole of the Joint Area Committee. Councillor Ferguson, yes, I think this is one of those big questions. I think there really is sometimes a bit of confusion regarding the terms consultation and engagement and information sharing. And I think that I believe we are on a journey, I think would be your expression, Councillor Ferguson, of progress. There is no doubt for me that we need to be very clear in the purpose. So, as with all these processes, for a consultation process, we need to be clear of purpose from the very outset and actually be clear about what the measurements and the weightings will be throughout that process, but also be very clear and transparent with those whom we are consulting with about what the potential is for impact and effect of that process. So I think it's work underway, more to be done, and I think we will probably have another review of this through the budget process once again in the coming year. And again, this is the type of area of work where I think there's potentially a role for scrutiny to look at as well. Councillor Penny-Evans, I think I would agree with all of the areas of potential activity for scrutiny to be involved in, as you suggested. I think, ultimately, scrutiny for me has two roles. It's the checks and balances, both of existing policy, but of policy development. The anti-poverty strategy is incredibly important. There's clearly opportunities around looking at outcomes and impact of the strategy through the development of the delivery plans. There is ample opportunity for every member, and I would hope and expect every member of the Chamber would want to participate in playing their role in ensuring that we reduce the blight that we have of child poverty in the city. We have seen in the last year, not claiming that it's about our interventions, but in the last year, there has been a reduction in the most recent figures announced, lowering from the 42.4% down to 37.9%. But it's still a significantly worrying number. And I think that there's much to be done. I think there is something through the inclusive economic strategy and the engagement that we've undertaken with our partners and also businesses across the city around what roles they can play. And perhaps there's a piece that might be looking around what does corporate social responsibility look like for a Newcastle business, and might they be able to contribute? And this could be something we could factor into some of the delivery plans around the anti-poverty strategy. So thank you for that. Councillor Lovett, on the school streets, I think there's a bigger picture here. Councillor Byrne and I have been talking about some time, and actually looking about that, as others have said as well, about that whole school journey. And I think there's a need that, rather than necessarily look in isolation at individual schools, there's a case about looking at the whole school estate of our city and actually understand, because now it's not probably like when we grew up where you went to your local school. There are people who are travelling around the city quite long distances, and I think getting a sense of exactly where people are travelling to and from, where there are pinch spots, and an opportunity to take a much more holistic and strategic approach to it. And I think that's work that we tend to undertake during the summer months, and there will be engagement taking place with councillors, obviously with their own localised knowledge, particularly those of you who are school governors. The transport issue, again, I hope I covered it previously. It is something that I would say cross-party, it's something there is a collective voice around ensuring that the bus operators, where we can possibly put the pressure, continue to provide the services that it should be doing. We are seeing reductions and we're seeing notices all the time, but through the committee and also through Transport for the North, we are making continuous lobbying of that. Councillor Williams, on net zero. Yes, I'm proud. I'm perhaps also guilty as charged that I was the cabinet member at the time who announced the 2030 target, and I think, I'm very pleased that we made that announcement, much more ambitious than a 2050 target of central government, because we recognise the reality of the world that we live in. This can't be kicked down the road anymore. I think we are making good progress. The report highlights a huge amount of activities that are already underway. We've done a lot across our own buildings estate of the City Council. I think that we have clear ambitions to continue through our net zero team. I was delighted that 3 weeks ago, they were shortlisted and nominated for best practices team through the Municipal Journal Awards and commended through that process on a national platform. So they do incredible work. They managed to draw in and attract a significant amount of external funding to deliver against these ambitions, but we still have a long way to go. But our commitment is clear, and 2030 is our target. So thank you for that. Councillor Smith, again, I hope I've covered the point regarding the school streets on that whole holistic approach rather than individual schools in isolation. But again, we'll be interested in hearing from, as I say, school governors and people with a knowledge of their locality and the local school around what the challenges are in individual cases and how we might bring that into a more holistic approach. Councillor Ashby, I will have to inquire as to the appropriateness and the availability of accessing data to be on 1 year rather than 3. Obviously, in many cases, it depends on the data collection process. But where it is available in 1 year, I see absolutely no reason why it can't be provided by the year. On the point around more trees, I think Councillor Byrne has responded many times in this chamber about our desire and our commitment to biodiversity and to appropriate trees, and hence the reason we have a tree strategy and a tree management plan, which is based around the right tree in the right place. So, yes, I would like to see more trees, but it's making sure it's the right trees in the right place. And on Newcastle Futures and the ability to continue to deliver and encourage young people and find employment, I think this is all wrapped around our inclusive economic strategy. We've got a clear commitment about ensuring every individual in this city is able to achieve their potential, whatever that might be. Newcastle Futures plays a key role, as do so many other services within the economic development team, within Newcastle Gateshead Initiative, within the welfare support team. It's really about ensuring that people have access both to every support, every benefit, and every aid to help them find gainful employment. And Councillor Story, As a small business owner, I'm quite committed to this agenda. I think it's absolutely critical. The purpose of the inclusive economic strategy from the outset was really focused on small businesses. If you look as a model of where I would see our economic strategy being based around, it's somewhere like the Rural Valley. It's very much around SMEs, small family businesses, which are the cornerstone of a growing and sustainable economy. I think the reason why the inclusive economic strategy is really important because the focus is citywide, not city-centric. And I think that when you see the vast majority of small businesses, they may well start off in a back bedroom. Mine certainly did. I think that they span out and they're regularly across our neighbourhoods and our communities. They're not necessarily in one place. They all have individual needs and demands and challenges. I think through the inclusive economic strategy, what we're looking at doing is understanding the right support that we can provide to garner those businesses that are small and starting, understand the frailty of a small business, but equally about the vitality that they can bring to neighbourhoods. And part of this really is looking at some of our district hearts and how we can enhance and support that activity. So we have got things like the High Street Fund that is looking at areas, particularly Shillingham Road and Shields Road in the east end of the city. And we're looking at how do we actually encourage and grow those businesses. So I think we are committed to the agenda. My view is that the days of mass international mobile inward investment are vastly reduced. And really our role is what can we do, looking at spin-outs from universities, working with the college to look around entrepreneurships, and really just, what are those small businesses, whether it's the amount of pop-up food stores that are occurring now, how do we support them and enable them to grow into sustainable businesses? I genuinely believe that they are the cornerstone of everything that we'll do to have a successful and vibrant and vital city in the future. So I hope I've covered everything, Lord Mayor.
I think it did. I think you gave a commitment to provide further information to Councillor Ashby. I think that's right. So with that caveat, does Council agree to receive the report? Thank you. The next agenda item is 10. Are the appointments agreed as set out on the supplemental agenda? Thank you. Then we come to the emergency motion, which I mentioned at the start of the agenda. So this is agenda item 10. It's the emergency motion on Save Our Railway ticket offices, and it's to be moved by Councillor Gray, to move the motion, to be seconded by Councillor Kemp. Thank you, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, for accepting the emergency motion. It was recently announced that train operators have announced plans to close up to 1,000 railway ticket offices. This would leave our region with only the ticket office at Newcastle Central Station on the mainline railway station, with LNER closing their other ticket offices in the region, and Northern Region to close all of their railway ticket offices in the North East except for Hartlepool. Lord Mayor, the Railway Delivery Group has labelled these vast changes as customer-focused changes. Lord Mayor, I believe customers are at the bottom of the Railway Group delivery priorities. These changes, in the words of Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the R&T Union, he said, "Our union and the travelling public do not want a dehumanised railway that will be rife with crime and antisocial behaviour, inaccessible to the most vulnerable. This is because ticket office closures under Schedule 17 of the regulations mean that there will be no regulations on staffing in those stations whatsoever. Lord Mayor, this feels to me like further deregulation of our railways by the back door by greedy bosses taking money out of the service hand over fist. Closing the railway ticket offices will have a disproportionate impact on disabled, deaf and older people, as well as those with little or no access to the internet. Noted in the overwhelming opposition to ticket office closures from disabled people's organisations, this is due to the range of services that are provided by railway ticket offices, which may not be available at ticket vendor machines, such as refunds, certain passes, ticket class changes, cycle reservations, and for many assistance getting onto the trains. Ticket vending machines cannot replace the dedicated advice and expertise provided by railway ticket staff. Lord Mayor, the government is trying to play down how many tickets are sold, stating that only 12% of tickets are sold at ticket offices. Lord Mayor, in 2022-23, there were 1.5 billion passenger journeys, which equates to around 180 million journeys being facilitated by ticket offices. 180 million, a number that is not insignificant by any stretch of the imagination. Whilst Newcastle Central Station will retain its ticket office, those that are wishing to visit the city may be put off or unable to travel from their nearest train station, and closures may also cause issues for those wishing to return back to Newcastle on the return leg of their journey. A point that was demonstrated by the fact that the morning after I discussed with Councillor Kilgour about bringing this motion to full council, she sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post from the RMT about a woman who'd had issues with ticket machines at St Albans Station that could have only been sorted out by a member of ticket office staff, which meant she was able to come to Newcastle. Without those staff, she may have not been able to make that journey. These consultations close on Wednesday, 26th July, and on the RMT website there is a helpful tool to allow submissions to the various train operators and to Transport Focus. I'd encourage members to feed back their own experiences as well as those of their residents, alongside, as this motion states, to write to the various parties named. Lord Mayor, if this decision is carried out to close the majority of railway ticket offices, we will all be poorer for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. Councillor Kemp to second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm delighted, angry to second this important motion. Also irritated that Charlie's actually said most of the things that I would have said inevitably, but there you go. That's comradely spirit. Fundamentally, this is an action that is taken by greed and actually has a disinterest in the customer, the service user, and in particular, for my mind, it's an action that is discriminatory. It ignores, by decision, so many citizens, by exclusion and by unfairness. Research by the Royal National Institute of Blind has found that only 3% of people with sight loss said they could use a ticket vending machine without problems. 58% said it was impossible. People with disabilities are disproportionately represented in the number of internet non-users. 23% disabled adults have no access to the internet, compared to 6% of non-disabled adults. Blind and visually impaired people, as well as older people, are especially likely to be digitally excluded. Booking online, therefore, is not an option. A leading rail ticket retailer quotes that there are over 2,822 ticket types with 901 unique ticket names, 655 restriction codes and 1,288 route codes in the rail ticketing system. And this complexity has only got worse since COVID, as train operating companies have introduced even more ticket types. A vast majority of these are not available at a ticket vending machine. A tweet by Richard Osman yesterday was praised for its take on the community. That tweet said, "I think ticket offices at railway stations are one of those things that remind people of what a society should actually be. Real jobs, real interactions, and community can sometimes be placed above shareholders' dividends. It's a choice we can make, so save ticket officers." And let's not forget the essential function of ticket office staff, passenger safety. In London's Travel Watch recent research on personal security, it was found that visible staff at stations made women and other groups of people, including disabled women and people, feel safer when travelling. Passengers, particularly women and young people, reported that in the absence of staff, they wouldn't know how to get help in the event of a crime or incident. Staffed station ticket officers are currently guaranteed places where people can go to and seek help. Without sufficient visible staff at stations, there's a risk that particular groups of people with protected characteristics who face a higher incidence of harassment and hate crime will not feel safe while travelling on the rail network and will opt to avoid travelling altogether. Given that marginalised groups already face so many barriers to moving around the world freely and safely, we should be doing everything in our power to ensure that we do not create even more difficulties. Council, I believe that this action is pernicious, it's led by greed, and we should all support the RMT campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. So I will call on the speakers now. Councillor Pattinson, to be followed by Councillor Campion. Please, Councillor Pattinson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and apologies for any duplication. It's a situation it can be unavoidable. Certain things, I'm afraid, has been stolen actually by my leader. But anyway, Mike Lynch, RMT General Secretary, has stated the decision to close 1,000 ticket offices and issue thousands of redundancy notices to staff is a savage attack on railway workers, their families, and the travelling public. This, Lord Mayor, is a catastrophic for elderly, disabled, and vulnerable passengers trying to access the rail network. Lord Mayor, the Tory franchise system has and still is a financial disaster. The use of taxpayers' money financing fat cat train operators and shareholders by billions of pounds is a national scandal. The failed privatisation ethos still exists in the minds of the Tory government. The government claimed through rail firms there is a drop in buying tickets over the counter in recent years. Nothing to do with the pandemic then. Yet there's no countering evidence to confirm this. There is photograph evidence published in today's Daily Mirror to reveal passengers are already enduring long queues. Two examples of excessive queuing in Cambridge and Newton Abbot are plain to see. And that's in the Daily Mirror. Everyone wants to have a look at it. I've got it here. It is also highlighted that out-of-service ticket machines, which accentuate management's inability to provide a seamless service to its customers. One photo shows a packed ticket office and entrance at Cambridge Station. Another shows a lengthy queue at Newton Abbot Station in Devon. Mick Lynch said, our campaign to save ticket offices is being taken into every town, city and village. Recent announcement of ticket office closures is a fig leaf for the wholesale destaffing of stations. He said destaffing would hit safety-critical train dispatch, passenger assistance and non-ticket officer customer service workers. Lord Mayor, fat cat operators and the government do not care one jot about passenger safety on a well-staffed but friendly railway open to all to use. They want to cut costs and make profits for shareholders and run the network into the ground without a thought as to the vital role the rail industry plays in the country's economy. There will be protests starting tomorrow against mass closures of ticket offices, and that will be nationwide. I have the quote from Richard Osman, but Councillor Kemp has actually stolen my... Forgive. I'd just like to say to finish, I worked on the rails for over 40 years, so I'm sort of an expert witness when it comes to these matters. And over those 40 years, I've witnessed violence, sexual assault, all sorts of different incidents that were very serious indeed. We need people interfacing with the customer, with the passenger. Support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattinson. Just before I come to you, Councillor Campion, would you mind if I made a comment, please, about the audio quality? I'm not sure what's causing it, but if we can do anything to improve it, it would help. Councillor Campion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try my best to enunciate in that case. It seems like every week we hear about terrible Tory plans to try and decimate our railways, and this week seems no different. Although I agree there is a whiff of greed about these changes, let us not actually forget that a large number of train operators, including South Eastern, LNER and Northern, are actually now run by an operator of last resort, the Department for Transport. So as ever, it's Tory greed wanting to watch our public transit fail. Ticket office closures, although not directly impacting Newcastle Station, would have knock-on effects across our city and our region that would be at best detrimental to people's abilities to travel and at worst catastrophic to trying to get people out of their cars and onto trains. Now, it's already been brought up. You might have heard only 12% of tickets are purchased at ticket offices. I would actually dispute Councillor Gray's claims, as I think it doesn't take into account season ticket travel. But, you know, by the by, don't let this fool you into thinking our ticket offices are a barren waste of space. It is actually quite the opposite. Let's not forget that rail ticket offices serve as a hub of information and assistance. They offer a reliable source of guidance, particularly for those who may be unfamiliar with the intricacies of our railway system. Now, I don't know about yourselves, Council, but as a self-proclaimed train nerd who can tell their Class 800s from their Class 801s, I still can't actually tell you when peak turns to off-peak, turns to super off-peak, but our valuable ticket staff can, and sometimes that is what has made the difference between a ticket being valid for a customer and for them being charged a fine and a new ticket cost. Of course, one of the most crucial aspects of ticket offices is the role they play in ensuring our railways are accessible and usable by all. Recently, I spoke with residents in Berwick-upon-Tweed, where they will be losing their ticket office. Many people raised concerns about the ticket machines that often don't work. They're worried they're going to end up with the wrong ticket types. They're worried they're going to be overcharged, and they feel as if the government is doing everything it can to stop them from using the railways. I spoke with one Berwick resident who relies on station assistants to get on and off trains due to their disability. They always use the station ticket office, and they are worried that the already patchy accessibility support at stations will be greatly worsened after the ticket office close. They are now thinking about having to get expensive taxis and relying on family to drive them, when previously they would have got the train. Lastly, let us not forget the role ticket office plays in ensuring tourists are able to use and access our railways. They are the information centres helping tourists and visitors navigate their way around our region. Ultimately, to close our ticket offices would be to close access to our railways. It would be to create a two-tier society where those who can navigate our complex rail system can use it, and those who cannot will be left behind. It's time we get our railways back on track, keep our ticket offices open, and let the train take the strain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. To be followed by Councillor Story and then Councillor Ashby, and then Councillor Gray has the right of reply. Councillor Story.
Lord Mayor, Council, I want to thank Councillor Gray for bringing this very, very important motion. I'm really proud to support this. My husband's a train driver, and I can't say I'm an expert witness like George, but I certainly hear quite a lot about what happens on the railways. It's a physically and emotionally demanding job, and it's one that's becoming increasingly isolated as cuts are made to the supporting infrastructure. Cuts to ticket offices and the move towards driver-only operation, which is coming down the line. Little laugh? No? Thank you. Will make our railways unsafe for staff, for women and children, and for the public generally. And it will result in catastrophic job cuts, and ultimately, it's going to mean that less people are going to be using the rail network. Promoting and increasing the use of public transport is key to tackling our climate emergency, and at a time where we need to be getting more people to use public transport, this move is short-sighted. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's typical of the Tories. It makes no sense economically or environmentally, which is surely some of our biggest priorities. On a human level, it's potentially devastating. I want to focus on one group in particular on whom cuts to the ticket offices will have a hugely detrimental impact. And we've already heard something about that tonight, but I do want to say a little bit more. The planned mass closure of ticket offices across the UK will shut millions of disabled people out of the rail network. And it's really important that we understand this and that we lobby really, really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. It's been extensively reported that the government and train companies are seeking this widespread closure of ticket offices, and we've already heard around about 1,000 offices are going to close. I use the train about twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I come from Middlesbrough and back. I cannot remember a single time that I went to the ticket office and there wasn't a queue there. Ticket offices are well used. These mass job losses are going to make stations unsafe, stations inaccessible, and the outcome is going to be very few savings and benefits. The Secretary of State recently confirmed that she's asked the railway to undertake consultations on ticket provision, and the timing of that consultation is very, very short. Furthermore, the government has always stated publicly that it wishes to recommence the rollout of driver-only operation, and I believe that these policies will lead to extensive destaffing of the rail network and will have a huge impact on safety. It will in particular have an impact on disabled people for whom there are numerous barriers. I'm running out of time, so I'll wind up a little bit there. This is a really, really important motion, one that every single one of us should get behind. And I just would like to say to people, please do support the motion and support rail staff and the rail industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Just before I come to you, Councillor Ashby, I did make reference to the audio. Could I ask all members who are speaking at the microphones not to try and move them about too much? It does have an effect on the sound system, but to speak carefully and, well, loudly as you can into the microphone itself. Thank you. Councillor Ashby.
Yes, Lord Mayor. Anything that can be done to encourage the wider spread and greater use of public transport is to be applauded. Anything which discourages it should be avoided. I've travelled back from London this afternoon. At King's Cross Station, all 8 ticket windows were open and 25 people were in the queue ahead of me. The person who helped me efficiently and pleasantly was of the opinion that as well as the scrapping of ticket offices across the region and elsewhere, the big stations would have the number of windows reduced too. It's patently obvious to anyone with eyes and ears that ticket offices do far more than sell tickets. They're a source of advice to the uncertain traveller and for those and the digitally excluded, and those who just want a friendly human face, not an unforgiving computer screen. I hope that our local MP, Catherine McKinnell, who chairs the all-party parliamentary group on the East Coast Main Line, will be in the vanguard to protect this invaluable resource.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Gray, your right of reply, please.
Thank you. Do I need to move it? Cheers. Thank you for those interventions, Lord Mayor. I think, you know, as Councillor Kemp has identified, the description of a customer-focused decision is a laughable one as a description, and thank you for highlighting the massive impact that these changes will have. And I think, as Councillor Patterson rightly points out, many images have been shown in the press and on social media in the last few days about the impact that these changes would have on the travelling public and how much to detriment of us all that would be, and also to thank him obviously for his long service on the railways. I think Councillor Campion makes an important point, but I think there's, in addition to that, it's that the Tory greed is evident, but I believe that the involvement of the train operators, those who are operating as a last resort, is to facilitate the goody bosses. It is around making the whole system approach, and it is about putting money into those people's pockets. I didn't realise we were at the North Northumberland constituency hustings this evening, but I'm sure ticket office staff at Central Station Railway Ticket Office would be able to help Councillor Campion with some of those geographical challenges if he thinks he requires that help. And Councillor Story, his intervention is incredibly important in reminding the fact of these changes around railway ticket offices are part of a wider scheme to dehumanise our railways, and this has been seen over the course of a number of months and probably years, I'd say, as well, around the struggles that the workers in the RMT union and other railway unions have been going through, including those in ASLEF, to protect these services and make sure that they continue to be good employers that we should all hope them to be. And Councillor Ashby, I hope that trip to London wasn't just so you could have the experience of using railway ticket offices today to bring your experience, but I think those were an important thing to have said. And as much as I stole some of Councillor Kemp's lines, he stole my closing remark. But I will say it's important to reflect on what this means for society. You know, about community being above profit, real jobs and real interactions ahead of those stuff in the pockets of greedy bosses. And it is, most importantly, a choice that our government can make. Thank you so much, Lord Mayor, and again to encourage Council to fill in those consultation responses to the train operators, because it's so important that we hear a breadth of voices from across our city in this. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Now, I'm watching this one carefully. Is the motion agreed? Agreed. Thank you. If I could perhaps on the next motion, which is down on my agenda as the next motion, Newcastle United, ask Councillor Higgins kindly if he will tell us that if this motion is withdrawn. Yes, you're nodding your head. Thank you. The motion is withdrawn. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the housing crisis motion, which is going to be moved by Councillor Huddart and seconded by Councillor Hindmarsh. Councillor Huddart? Can't see you. You're there. Yes, yes. I've got that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I can hear myself very well from here, so I hope you can too. It doesn't need me to tell people here about the difficulties we've had over the past couple of years, you know, and the difficulties our residents have had in keeping essentials going, given the price hikes in gas, electricity, council tax, foodstuffs, etc. Now, to add to these cost of living and fuel poverty issues, we are all now facing rent rises, the prospect of higher mortgage interest rates, etc. And we're all trying to keep our heads above water. Some years ago, following the traditional heavy industries that died in this area, it saw thousands of people leaving this area, and it's taken several decades to rebuild, diversify and redevelop. And if we are to generate new businesses to provide jobs for the generations to come, we must build the kind of affordable homes this city's future citizens need. Our city has a housing crisis. So much of our former council stock has been sold off under right to buy. It's left us with ageing properties of all shapes and sizes in need of constant repair and upgrading. And we need to add to that the shortage of trained trade staff to complete the backlog of repairs and refurbishment. We need to bring them up to standard. And we've too many void properties waiting to be turned round and made habitable. Far too little social homes have been built that are suitable for couples and families in the recent decade. And, you know, the market has been left wide open to opportunist private rented landlords. And there is this thriving real estate investment trust. They seem to be able to find land and submit plans to build flats and houses for rent, and not for social rent. And I suspect that there isn't anybody in this room who doesn't have housing issues at the top of their casework. Every day we read of young adults unable to afford to rent or buy and having to return to live with their parents, and of landlords converting rental properties into Airbnb type short-term rents, as that's more profitable. And we did bring this up last year. This is why addressing the need to build new is becoming more desperate every day. There is land and large chunks of it are owned by the council. What is missing is the will to build new and in volume to provide thousands more decent homes for our residents. It is a scandal that we have thousands of people on our waiting list whose only chance of getting a roof over their heads is via the private rented sector. People need the stability that comes with warm, decent, affordable homes for their health and well-being. We must revamp a housing plan which recognises the rising numbers of low-paid families who will never be able to afford to buy on one of the new owner-occupier estates springing up. We can't do much about the mortgage rates, but we can help by building far more shared ownership, shared equity properties, as well as action the changes I've outlined in the motion. All the housing agencies and advice centres say we need to build more. Even the Conservative chairman of the LGA last month said that addressing the chronic housing shortage must be a national priority, and he called for a renaissance in council house building. There are better choices out there, and with a bit of vision and determination, we can make a difference. Decent housing is also an essential, and we should make it a priority for Newcastle. Our residents do deserve a better deal in housing, and this motion sets out the way to do it. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. And I apologise to Council again. I'm misreading my crib sheet. I think this is to be seconded by Councillor Ferguson. And thank you, Councillor Hindmarsh, for keeping me right. Woman of your experience knows exactly what she's doing. Councillor Ferguson. Okay, thank you. So I have an amendment here. So I will call on Councillor Ali to move the amendment, to be seconded by Councillor Ion.
I know you said don't move this, but just slightly. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening to all. Thank you, Councillor Huddart, for your motion, which I agree the sentiments of. However, I am having to amend the motion for the following reasons, which I hope you're able to agree with. The Council's overall vision for the city is one which is a great place to live. To achieve this, it is important we have a housing offer that supports the aspirations of all, regardless of tenure, background, age, physical ability or income, and ensures housing makes a positive contribution to meeting the needs of all residents, both current and future. We are acutely aware of the pressures currently faced by households and those trying to access a decent and affordable home in the housing market. For this reason, we continue to work tirelessly to deliver on our new build ambitions, to make best use of existing housing by bringing empty homes back into use, to assist people to remain living in a home of their choice, and to improve the customer journey for those seeking to access social housing. We are ideally positioned to take advantage of new opportunities and to build on our already strong record in delivering new housing. Nearly 6,000 new homes have been built over the last 6 years, including over 1,000 new affordable homes over the last 3 years. Last year, 157 new affordable homes were delivered using the Council's own assets, building on the 169 delivered in the previous year. We know that some people can find the housing system complex and challenging. There are not enough homes to meet demand, and those that are available are often unaffordable to lots of people. For this reason, we are keen to improve the customer journey and allocate homes fairly, making the best use of the Council's housing stock. Also for this reason, Cabinet will be asked to approve changes to the allocations and lettings policy later this month to help streamline the process for those seeking to interact with the Council when seeking housing options. But demand is not just confined to social housing sector, which is why the private rented service offers advice and assistance to landlords and tenants, including those seeking housing options. An example of our work is to help people secure suitable accommodation via a rent deposit scheme, which last year a total of 3,468 clients were supported in understanding those options, and 391 tenants supported to sustain their tenancies. We also recognise that empty homes are a wasted resource and can cause blight to an area, as well as attract antisocial behaviour if they fall into a state of disrepair. To assist homeowners and private landlords to bring them back to use, the Council offer advice and renovation grants to assist with capital costs, which on average brings 300 much-needed homes per year back into use. With regards to including at least 20% affordable and/or social housing, this policy within the local plan includes a requirement that new housing sites provide a 15% proportion of new homes to be affordable. The Council therefore cannot currently oblige private housing developers to provide any more than 15% affordable housing on qualifying sites. To do so would require adoption of a new local plan supported by robust evidence of housing need and viability, and will take a number of years. The Council will, however, be reviewing its evidence base on housing needs later this year. This evidence will then inform the next review of the local plan. I therefore urge Council to vote for this amendment, which sets out our position and provides asks that are achievable. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ali. Councillor Ion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to second Councillor Ali's amendment to the motion on the housing crisis that our city is currently facing. This amendment addresses the pressing need for action to alleviate the housing shortage and improve the living conditions of our residents. It outlines crucial steps that must be taken to address the challenges we are witnessing and pave the way for a brighter future. Lord Mayor, it is with concern that we acknowledge the series of events contributing to the housing crisis in Newcastle. Rising interest rates have made home ownership increasingly unattainable for young people, whilst existing homeowners face substantial repayment charges. Moreover, the insufficient stock of social and private rental properties fail to meet the diverse needs of our population. The sale of former council houses under the Right to Buy scheme has resulted in a significant reduction in available housing, with replacement bills failing to keep pace. Given the gravity of the situation, this amendment calls for decisive action to address the housing crisis in Newcastle. It urges the revision and updating of information on land availability and prospects for demolition. Lord Mayor, this amendment represents a comprehensive and proactive approach to tackling the housing crisis. It recognizes the urgency of the situation and offers tangible solutions to address the challenges faced by our citizens. By adopting this amendment, we demonstrate our commitment to improving the housing situation in Newcastle and ensuring that our residents have access to safe, affordable, and sustainable homes. I second this amendment to support the development of a robust housing strategy that addresses the pressing issues we face and provides a roadmap for a better future. Let us take decisive action, collaborate with relevant stakeholders, and prioritize the needs of our residents. Lord Mayor, I second the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ion. Councillor Ferguson, you reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Decent homes are of fundamental importance. Not just newly built homes, not just social housing, but homes for all. Not just where people could move to, but supporting people where they are now. The city needs to urgently address a range of key points: the repairs and maintenance backlog in social housing, delivering a high-quality council-owned social housing offer, establishing the appropriate mix of housing tenures, types and geographies to support all of the city to thrive, and setting out an affordable business case to achieve these. It isn't clear to me why the administration wants to excise some parts of our motion. The balance of building is as we've described. Council housing stock is ageing. And why must we duck the purchasing programme or merely report progress on a schedule as appropriate? We must make use of brownfield funding to regenerate key parts of the city, but based on local priorities. We need to ensure that developers bring forward key infrastructure that helps to build communities, not satellites. And I'm concerned that legislative changes coming forward about developer contributions could hinder this. If you want to reject the rates of affordable housing in developments, at least make sure they're delivered where they should be, not letting developers off via loopholes. And let's be bold and ambitious with what we directly control. Amending the allocations and lettings policy, for example, is all well and good, but when demand is as high as it is and the waits are as long as they are, this risks being mere fiddling. Officers in YHN and the Council are doing the best they can in the circumstances they find themselves. But funding needs to flow where it is needed. Proper processes need to be established to maximise efficiency. And we can't simply rely on raising social housing rents when the cost of living continues to spiral. One of my residents, with her 2 children, has been waiting for years for appropriate housing, dealing with the impact that has on her mental health, her family life and more. Another was eventually moved temporarily so that chronic damp and mould issues could be dealt with comprehensively, but only after I put in pressure over months to see progress. I'm sure we all have stories from all our wards of the challenges people face with their housing. Because this housing crisis is not an abstract issue. It's real, it's here, and it's now. I urge Council to support the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Huddart, you have the right of reply.
I'm replying to the amendment, Lord Mayor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Please. It would be helpful if the amendment was addressed.
Right, thank you. Yes, I have seen the amendment and I think it's rather disappointing because it does represent a watering down of ambition here. And I don't like the nips and tucks either that are proposed. And if you recognise that there are thousands of people on our waiting lists, the majority of whom are low-income families, why do you not support more radical measures to build more social housing for rent? I'm perfectly well aware of the numbers of properties that have been built. And I am also perfectly aware, as most people in this room are, that it's Housing Plus or specialist housing for older or disabled people. And I have advocated for those, and I have advocated previously and stood here and asked for assistance to help landlords improve their properties over the years. I understand all that. What I don't understand is why we are not building more social housing suitable for couples and families. Councillor Kemp mentioned in his report about vision and council priorities, and I would say, why is building social housing not one of your priorities? The Tories have tried for years to push everyone into owner occupation or the private rented sector, and now we have a Labour council doing that, following suit. Who decides the housing policy for this city? Is it the Tory government and Michael Gove, or is it a Labour council unwilling to undertake radical action to build and repair? That's my answer to the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. Is the amendment agreed or do we need a vote? Do we need a vote? Right, we'll take a vote on the amendment, please. All those in favour of the amendment, please indicate. And if you can't use a go vote, please stick your hand up. All those who don't agree with the amendment? Could you, those who haven't been able to vote, could you put your hands up and tell me how you want your vote recorded? Councillor Jesmond, beg your pardon. Yeah? This is on the amendment. Are you for or against the amendment? Yes, for. For? Okay. Councillor Hobson?
This is the problem with the IT, Lord Mayor, and I have to register the seat number 51. I am actually how can that be rectified?
The short answer is, I didn't know you'd moved. You haven't. You're where you were originally. We don't want to have any.
Lord Mayor, I understand that your vote's being picked up irrespective of where you're sitting, so it's actually been registered.
There'll be one vote per person, it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah. Councillor Sadiq? Yes, for the amendment? Any other hands up? Did I see any?
Councillor Byrne.
Councillor Byrne? For the amendment, thank you. Whose hands over here? Councillor Hyde-Marsh? You're against the amendment. Councillor Huddart? Councillor Mitchell? It's registered. Okay, fine. So is the voting completed? The voting is those in favour of the amendment is carried. So the amendment is carried. So that means we need to vote on the substantive motion as amended. Do we need a vote, or is that just agreed? Okay, agreed. Fine. Now I'll get this right this time. This is the motion on Mayor House, and it's Councillor Huddart to move, seconded by Councillor Hyde-Marsh. I'll get it right this time. Sorry, I can't hear.
He's declaring an interest from his employment. Yes.
Right.
Shall I start, Lord Mayor?
I think that would be a good idea. Yes, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. I had intended to speak on this motion, but as unfortunately Councillor PJ Morrissey is not able to be here this evening, I was asked to stand in. Mayor House is quite a unique building in the middle of this city, and it has been very well used and very well regarded over the years for its contribution to the work of the voluntary sector, which itself contributes so much to the life of and well-being of our citizens. I used to work in Mayor House, and it was of such value, because I worked for a charity then, to meet with and to hear from and to cooperate with other charities it was of particular value to the smaller charities who were able to make use of their library, their shared accommodation, meeting rooms, etc. And you did learn a lot from other people and from other charities. And I do find it difficult, Lord Mayor, to understand how a building of such significance could be sold without the knowledge and cooperation of the City Council and just plonked on us, you know? And this has resulted in a scrabble by dozens of charities to now find new housing. And the fact that they're going to have to find new housing removes that little cluster, the hub that Mere House was. And the charities will be scattered all over the city, and that is a great pity. And I do think the City Council has to account for the delay in getting that information out to the general public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Huddart. It's to be the motion's to be seconded by Councillor Hindmarsh.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think we were all a bit surprised to hear that Mere House is going to be sold. I mean, the tenants of Mere House received this in June, telling them that the building was going to be up for sale. We should be doing everything in our power to ensure, support these charities. Over the years, they have been and supported the residents of this city without question. We have never been able to emulate the work they have done, all the expertise that they demonstrated. We cannot allow the 40 years to be sacrificed in such a manner. They have supported the residents of the city through COVID without question or thought about their own safety. The council owe them a debt of gratitude, as these charities are indispensable and should be not be thought of as an afterthought. Without these charities and the expertise that these contains, the council will be unable to increase pressure to provide adequate services to fill the demand and need that these charities cater and provide. These charities are second to none and deserve the respect of this city. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hindmarsh. I have two speakers, Councillor Mains to be followed by Councillor Keynes.
Excuse me, Mayor. I'm slightly confused because what has just been said there isn't the motion that's in the papers that was actually put forward by PJ Morrissey.
Are you talking, sorry about this, to ask the question, are you talking about the mover or the seconder of the motion in Councillor Morrissey's name?
So no, the whole content of the motion, what Councillor Huddart has said, is not the motion that's in the papers.
Okay, let me just check what the position on that is.
Lord Mayor, the notice of motion is the one that was published on the agenda by, by the council, obviously, but in the name of Councillor Morrissey. That is the notice of motion before the council. Obviously, Councillor Huddart made comments in presenting the notice of motion, but the notice of motion is the one that's published on the agenda.
Right, okay. It just sounded like it was an attack rather than a motion. I mean, I was going to get up to say that I was happy to support the motion, but I mean, I can reassure the council that we are in contact with the voluntary sector in Mere Trust to ensure that there is support, advice and guidance for the charities that are there. How we were supposed to give any more notice than what we were given is impossible. It was just suddenly announced at 3:30 on a Monday, if I remember rightly. A small task group has been made up of members from the Voluntary Sector Forum. Lib Dem councillors were at that meeting. And we've decided that what we'll do is keep a watch and brief with the council's head of property to make sure that premises are found for all the charities affected and that their needs are met. We had no indication at that time that this is what was going to happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Means. Councillor Keynes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now I'm addressing the motion as published in the agenda. I want to address the role of Mere Trust. The impact of COVID and the rise in utility bills has been significant. The result of working during the pandemic has seen many charities looking to downsize their office use. The Pilgrim Street demolition didn't lead to the uptake of office space as expected. And what we're finding in the community and voluntary sector, that groups are now looking for less but better space, faced with issues of cost. Mere Trust faced with the issue of cost of refurbishment of a listed building, alongside costs of basic maintenance of the building. The business model that was under which it was set up 40 years ago began to break down. The business model began to break down post-COVID with the increase in utility costs. This made the below-market rents for which Mere House was known and for which its business model was built look less and less feasible. The issue then for the Trust began to be explored by the Trust was how it could continue to provide space to the charity sector at below-market rents, while also maintaining and upgrading the building. So the question the Trust had was what to do now. The future role of the Trust in meeting its charitable aims without Mere House is now the key focus of the trustees. Actions in progress include a task and finish working group set up with Mere Trust, the Council and the voluntary organisation Network North East to respond to issues as they arise. Northumbria University offering direct help to Mere House tenants to help with their physical relocation. Mere Trust is aiming to support tenants in relocating in whatever ways are needed. The aims of the charity underpin the support that will be given to tenants. It's important, I think, we look at the future of the Trust. There are a number of active conversations underway that explore how the Trust carries on its charitable aims in the future. As a result of the actions taken by the Trust to date, this means it will not be insolvent and it can continue to work with the sector. It is also clear that the current model is no longer viable post-COVID, post-pandemic, and in our current cost of living crisis. And that is sad but necessary to acknowledge. It also underlines wider difficulties faced by the sector, which we must and are aware of. The Trust will be actively engaged in exploring a constructive and positive future through continuing engagement with the sector.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keynes. I've just been notified that there are two more speakers on this motion. That's Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Woodwick. So could they go to the microphone, please, before I ask Councillor Huddart to do right of reply? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I had believed my intention to speak had been signalled in advance, so I'm grateful to you for allowing me to speak. And when I speak as an employee of the third sector, I should be clear. Our work is rarely easy, and our organisations are frequently not awash with cash. Things ain't getting any easier. Rent and utilities costs are spiralling, and funders are often unwilling to support those costs, preferring to fund front-end project delivery. I really fear for those organisations who are due to be turfed out, in some cases at short notice. I understand that times change, buildings don't always last forever. These things are facts of life. But what boggles my mind is how Mere Trust didn't see this coming from a long way away, how we were caught unawares with the attendant impact on the community and voluntary sector that entails. Tenants have been in touch with me to express their concern that they don't know where they're going to go. Some fear they might have to close. I acknowledge the Council was unaware, but surely that is a further underlying of the concern we must all share about the future of some tenants, including umbrella organisations like Vaughan, who provide support to others, like my own charity. The Council speaks highly of our partnership with the community and voluntary sector. If this is the case, now is an urgent time to act, to make significant moves to support vital organisations, many of which are the lifeblood of the local communities. If we don't act now, we don't know what we could lose and never get back. So let's come together and find out what we can do for those vital organisations. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Woodick.
Yes, Lord Mayor. I speak because I was a trustee of the City Council's nomination of a trustee between 2004 and 2011. So I'm very well aware of the enormous work that the Mere Trust has done, as has been pointed out before, over decades in supporting the voluntary sector. I also hear very clearly the points that Councillor Cairns made, talking about the very difficult future that the Trust, the voluntary sector and the city has faced over the last few years and will continue to face in the coming years as well. There are going to be some very difficult decisions, of which this is one, that the city, the Trust, must take on board and must, and I think this is the point, must well communicate. For a lot of people in this city, this announcement did come as a shock. There is the juxtaposition between the comments of Councillor Cairns tonight and the comments of the rest of the council, that the council didn't know what the Trust did. That is an impression, not a reality, but an impression. And it leads to people thinking things that may not have happened, will not happen. But that they do think that is worry and fear, not just for them, but for us as well. That's the reason for this motion. That's the reason this should go through. And that's the reason people should understand the real fears that many in this city have. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Woodick. Councillor Huddart, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank everyone.
Pardon?
Oh.
Hang on. Is something being said?
I think someone was giving hand signals.
Well, I'm not getting any hand signals.
Right. I'll continue on then.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea.
Right, thank you, Lord Mayor, to everyone who's made a contribution to this, and thank you to Councillor Cairns for her insights. I think we all have concerns about Mere Trust. I think most of us have had contacts with it over the years, etc. And I'm pleased to hear about the support being given to the Mere Trust by Northumbria and by the City Council, etc. And it seems as if it's quite multi-agency work here. And it's reassuring that the work of the assorted charities who work in Mere House, who live in Mere House, and who are supported by the Trust, that it is appreciated and that will continue. Hopefully with the multi-agency work, will mitigate any adverse effects on the closure, and that the short notice was regrettable, really, and let's hope they find homes in this city and carry on to support our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. We're on the Mayor House motion, and before we go to the vote, may I remind Council that the vote is on the motion on the Council agenda. Is the motion agreed? Thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 14, which is the motion on protecting our children from vaping products, to be moved by Councillor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Huddart. Hope she hasn't gone to sit down.
Thank you, Lord
Councillor
Mayor.
Taylor.
I hope all colleagues across the Council will support this motion. As a doctor, I was well aware of the severe harm that is caused by smoking tobacco, including cancers of the lung and head and neck, heart disease and chronic lung damage. So I was delighted by the introduction of e-cigarettes as a way of reducing this harm by helping adults to stop smoking cigarettes. I still support the Swap to Stop scheme, which aims to help 1 million smokers to stop. As for adults, vaping poses a small fraction of the risks of tobacco. But Council, there is a huge difference between helping those already addicted to nicotine and allowing children who have never smoked to become nicotine addicts. It has been found that the brains of children and young people are wired differently from adults, so they get addicted to nicotine much faster than an adult. And we also don't know the long-term effects of vaping. Yet we currently have a deliberate attempt by vape manufacturers to get our children hooked. Why else would disposable vapes be clearly advertised and marketed to children using cartoons, brands, bright colours and different flavours? With pocket money prices, brand names like Elf Bar, Lost Mary and Jewel, and a loophole that allowed vapes to be given away free to minors, is it surprising that they are attractive? As a result, the prevalence of vaping among 11 to 18-year-olds rose from 4% in 2021 to 8.6% in 2022. And recent evidence suggests that it is now even higher, with 24% of children in the UK saying they have tried vaping, including almost 100,000 children in the North East. And that's even though it is illegal to sell vapes to under 18s. There's also the problem that many of the products in sale in the UK are illicit and may contain banned chemicals or super-strength nicotine. BBC News recently reported on an analysis of vapes confiscated from pupils at a school in Kidderminster, which showed high levels of toxic chemicals, including lead, nickel and chromium, in highlighter vapes designed with bright colours to look like highlighter pens. The amounts of the metals found were 2.4 times the stipulated safe exposure level of lead, 9.6 times the safe level of nickel, and 6.6 times the safe level of chromium. The lab tests also found compounds called carbonyls, which break down when the e-liquid heats up into chemicals such as formaldehyde and acetaldehyde, at 10 times the level of legal vapes. Some had even more than cigarettes. Lead is a neurotoxin and impairs brain development. Chrome and nickel are allergens, and metal particles in general in the bloodstream can trigger blood clotting and can exacerbate cardiovascular disease. Carbonyls are mildly carcinogenic, and so with sustained use will increase the risk of cancer. Professor Dame Helen Stokes-Lampard, who is chair of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, said she was genuinely shocked by these findings, and she called for unregulated products to be taken off our streets, out of our shops, and for our young people to be protected. And while not a direct health issue, an area of growing concern in relation to vaping is the effect on the environment, particularly disposable vapes. In the UK, 1.3 million single-use vapes are thrown away every week, amounting to 167.5 million per year. Single-use vapes are designed as one unit, so batteries cannot be separated from the plastic, making them almost impossible to recycle. Councils report they are experiencing pollution from vapes in the form of plastic materials, electronic waste and hazardous chemicals. And in particular, the lithium batteries inside the plastic can sharply increase in temperature if crushed, for example in a waste collection vehicle, and become flammable. This all comes at a cost to the council taxpayer through fire damage to equipment and the specialist treatment needed to deal with hazardous waste. Recent research has found that more than 90% of smaller UK vape and vape juice producers are not registered under the WEEE regulations. What this motion is calling for is for vaping products to be regulated in a similar way to tobacco products, to be in plain packaging and kept out of sight behind the counter, for mandatory age of sale signage on vaping products, and a ban on free samples being given out to people of any age. I'm also asking for the Council to write to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to express Council's demand for greater regulation. There also needs to be urgent consideration of single-use vapes and their disposal to look at their inclusion in the WEEE regulations. As Chair of Health and Social Care Scrutiny, I am sure the committee would be happy to look at these issues further, and in particular to look at engagement with local schools. Lord Mayor, child vaping risks are becoming a public health catastrophe, and we must do what we can both locally and nationally to prevent this. I urge everyone to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, I think I've dropped another boo-boo. I do beg your pardon. I think this motion is being seconded by Councillor Kilgour, and Councillor Huddart is going to speak in the debate. Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for bringing this motion to Council tonight and for agreeing it to be a cross-party motion. We know that vaping is a safer alternative to smoking cigarettes and as such is a helpful aid for adults giving up smoking. However, as the motion attests, there's a significant health risk to children and young people who are increasingly using vapes. The statistics in this motion and highlighted by Councillor Taylor there are deeply troubling. Recent studies have shown a sharp rise in vaping amongst teenagers. This is not a trend we can afford to overlook, as the consequences are far-reaching and potentially devastating. The health risks associated with vaping are becoming increasingly apparent, from lung injuries and respiratory illnesses to addiction and compromised brain development. Our young people are being exposed to a ticking time bomb. The enticing flavours and sleek designs of e-cigarettes may be deceptive, but the impact on their lives and futures is real. Moreover, research suggests that teenagers who vape are more likely to experiment with conventional cigarettes, putting them at a higher risk for a lifetime of addiction and health issues. We cannot sit idly by while our future generations fall victim to this insidious cycle. There is a complete lack of regulation compared to conventional smoking, alcohol and other drug usage, and we must urge government, as this motion does, to legislate and give councils and our partners the powers we need to keep our young people, and indeed the whole population, safe and healthy. Lord Mayor, 40 children and young people were admitted to hospital in England last year due to vaping-related disorders, up from 11 2 years before. Research has shown that young people using e-cigarettes are twice as likely to suffer from a chronic cough than non-users. Adolescents are more vulnerable to nicotine dependency than adults. Chronic nicotine exposure can impact brain development. This can contribute to cognitive and attention deficit conditions and worsen mood disorders, including depression and suicidal thoughts. We need government to act. Bright colours and clever packaging entice children and young people to vape, and yet something as simple as bringing in plain packaging laws could help to stifle some of this. And there's a huge concern around the number of disposable vapes that are being used. Excuse me. As if the health impacts aren't bad enough, their lithium-based batteries are often mined in reprehensible conditions. They do great damage to the environment when spent, and, as Councillor Taylor said, are incredibly flammable and pose a fire risk in landfill and waste processing sites. So tonight, I implore each one of you to support this motion and take a stand against the dangers of young people vaping. Second the motion, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kilgour. I think if I'm right, Councillor Huddart.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. When the e-cigarettes were first introduced a few years ago, many of us gave it a bit of a tentative half-welcome, and we sat back to wait and see. Because initially, they were the way that many adults, and they were all adults then, were supported to quit smoking tobacco. So we began to suggest them as an alternative. Now, some members here may not remember, but I was chair of Smoke Free Newcastle, and there's a lot of scars on my back to prove it. They also may not know that just outside of this chamber, just by the sofas, there used to be 2 ashtrays, large ones, so you didn't have to reach far, plus the Pandan room, which we all used for drinks after the council meeting, used to put ashtrays out, ready. And I could not get them to stop. And I even went round one night and collected them all up, put them in my pocket, took them home to stop them being used. You also may be surprised to know that the person who helped me with this was a certain Nicholas Forbes. Wonder what happened to him. Now, people liked vapes because they were cheaper and they'd less of a social stigma. A few years later, we've turned around to discover that vaping is a multi-million-pound business. 4 million people a day use them, sales of $1 million per week. And you can buy these things on every street corner, in supermarkets and sweet shops and everything. And a lot of fancy names like Strawberry Delight and Pineapple Pie, and they still contain nicotine, which we know creates dependency. And they are marketed the same way they did with the Alco Pops, in pretty pink envelopes with sparkles on them, just the right thing your Barbie children want. And we do hear scare stories about youngsters getting up in the middle of the night to take a few puffs to stave off withdrawals, and of teachers finding vapes in children's pencil cases, smoke alarms now in school toilets to warn if vapes are being used. Unfortunately, this market is cleverly aimed at young people, the majority who never smoked in the first place. And there is a massive market, much of it illegal, with millions of vapes being imported alongside legal materials. Only recently, our own trading standards people were involved in the destruction of 1.6 tonnes of illegal vapes. And it's also important to note that in parts of China where the vapes are made, they're actually illegal. E-cigarettes have been made illegal in several EU countries, as well as places like Brazil and Turkey. And we've already heard about the batteries and the problems they present with the disposal. So, like a lot of grey areas, dodgy activities move in. And there are suspicions that this is now organised by large criminal gangs. There's a lot of money in it, and they are wanting to catch up, which is why I am saying, please support this motion. Thank you.
Lord Mayor,
Thank.
I move suspension of standing order 19, which is the ability given the hour of the day.
Is it seconded?
Is it seconded?
Is it agreed or do we need a vote?
Is it agreed or not?
We need a vote.
We'll take a vote, please. Anyone who can't vote, please stick your hand up. Are there any further votes to be taken on this side of the room? Anyone who hasn't been able to vote? No, I can't see any hands. Anyone on this side of the room? I can see Councillor Huddart. I can't see who that is. Oh, Councillor Robinson. I beg your pardon. Right, Councillor Huddart, how do you want to vote? In favour? Councillor Robinson? In favour. Councillor Hindmarsh? Thank you. That's all the hands I can see. Okay. The motion to extend standing orders is lost, so we'll carry on with the debate. I have one further speaker before I ask the right of reply. Councillor Ali. Oh, I beg your pardon.
It's all right.
No, sorry. It's my mistake. The guillotine has fallen, and there is one further speaker. I do beg your pardon.
It's all right.
You're
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I agree with the contents of this motion, Lord Mayor. It's an extremely important one in current times. As a member of the Joint Trading Standards Committee and mother of a 13-year-old, I'm very, very aware of the issues raised in this motion and the issues it presents young people that are at large unaware of the health dangers vaping presents or are peer pressured even if they know what they are. I was utterly disgusted learning that my 13-year-old was able to purchase a vape without any questions being asked at the local store. Of course, I reported the store and dealt with him appropriately. We know that the government is encouraging smokers to switch to vaping as they are less harmful than tobacco cigarettes. However, they now need to provide adequate regulation to prevent under 18s from vaping. Our Trading Standards Department have carried out some fantastic work in carrying out successful operations to catch culprits that either sell tobacco and related products illegally or to those that are underage. In June this year, our Trading Standards and Northumbria Police jointly swooped a local compound and gained access to 2 containers in which they found 12,500 packets of cigarettes, 50 kilograms of hand-rolled tobacco and over 1,500 vapes that did not comply with UK health regulations. The whole was estimated to have a retail value of £215,000 or street value of £105,000. It is one of the biggest founds in recent times and dealt a major blow to organised crime. So I do wholeheartedly support the motion and will do what I can to write to government and ask them to provide the adequate regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Taylor, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Kilgar, Councillor Ali and Councillor Haddart for their support for this important motion. I think this is a public health crisis that has taken everyone by surprise, and it's something that has to be dealt with very urgently. I do believe the government is moving in the right direction, but we need to put pressure on them to make sure that these regulations come in as quickly as possible. We have to stop our children being addicted to nicotine. It's a horrible drug. I actually live with somebody who is addicted to nicotine and has been unable to stop smoking, so I know just how bad nicotine addiction can be. Yes, let's carry on giving e-cigarettes to those who can't stop smoking cigarettes any other way, but otherwise, let's make sure that they are not available to our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Is the motion agreed? Okay. Right, so we're now, in accordance with Standing Order 19, going to deal with the rest of the business on the agenda. So on motion 15, which is on grass cutting, I would ask Councillor Donnelly to move the motion, to be seconded by Councillor Smith. Yeah. Do you want to defer it? Pardon? You'll take it tonight. Okay. I believe there is an amendment. Sorry, Councillor Smith, to second first. Seconded. There is an amendment which is, I think, from Councillor Byrne. And Councillor Cairns to second. Formally seconded. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there is another amendment from Councillor Kane. That's the first amendment. And Councillor Lovett to second. Yeah, I do beg your pardon. That's so there were 2 amendments to that motion on grass cutting. The first one from Councillors Kane and Lovett, and the second one from Councillor Byrne and Councillor Cairns. So, is the first amendment agreed? Do we need a vote? Okay, vote. Okay, is there anyone who hasn't been able to vote on this side? Councillor Huddart? You're voting yes. Councillor Hindmarsh? And I can't see any more hands on that side. Any more on this side? Everyone's okay? So the amendment, the first amendment, that's the amendment from Councillor Kane and Councillor Lovett, is lost. So we'll vote on the second amendment from Councillor Byrne and Councillor Cairns. So all those in favour of that amendment? Is that amendment agreed? That amendment's agreed. So we'll take a vote on the substantive motion as amended by Amendment 2. All those in favour? Okay, we don't need a vote on that one. Right. Okay, so we now come to the Holocaust Memorial Day motion. Do you want, Councillor Ion, do you want to deal with the matter now? Do you want to deal with it now? Are you moving it? Right. And to be seconded by Councillor Rahman? Okay, thank you. Is that motion agreed? Okay, fine, thank you. We'll move on to the motion on the NHS 75th anniversary, and this is Councillor Kilgour. Do you want the motion to be decided on now or deferred? Decided tonight. Okay, are you moving it? Okay, thank you. To be seconded by Councillor Williams. Seconded. Okay. Sorry, I'm just using my crib sheet here. Right, so that one we can go straight to the vote on. Is the motion agreed? Agreed. Right, thank you. And the last one is motion 18 on the tree policy. And this is where I ask Councillor Smith whether he wants to have the motion debated or deferred. Deferred. Okay, that will be deferred until the next meeting. Right, and so the last thing I have to advise is that the next meeting of Council will be at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 6th of September. Thank you all for your attendance and your perseverance and brilliant behaviour. Thank you.